So, welcome to part 3 of the Spirit of Selfishness. And I hope you have learned something from the other parts, part 1 and part 2. This part is called Difficult Discipleship. Now, there are many different ways to disciple. There are many different categories of discipleship, and there are different age groups when it comes to discipleship. And something to consider, something that has come to me is, well, what is the most difficult category or age group when it comes to discipleship? Who are the hardest to disciple? And I believe one of, if not the hardest group or age range to disciple, it is children. And I'm talking about young children. Now, some people might say straight away, I don't agree with that, because when we have Sunday school at church, it's much easier to get the children involved than the adults. Adults can be very skeptical. Adults can be very reserved, like, I don't want to do that. They've learned a lot and they have their arguments. And children don't have that. Children are much easier to form than adults are. But let me be clear by what I'm saying. When I'm talking about discipleship, I'm talking about people that have come to you. People that have said, I want to follow Jesus. People that ultimately want to be discipled. And I want to be clear with the children I'm talking about. I'm talking about our own children, our family. Because modern discipleship is, well, let me teach other children. Let me go to another place and let me have a meeting, or let me do Sunday school with other children. I'm talking about our own children. It's the most difficult category to disciple our own young children. Because like I said in the other parts, being at home, your mum, you're not a leader. You don't have a position. Your mum, your dad, you're in their everyday life. When you're in a church, you have a position. And when you have a position, many times you have a different kind of authority. Many times you get listened to on another level. But when you're at home, it's another story. Having a position and having authority does something when it comes to teaching. It affects us as teachers and leaders, and it affects those that are being taught. And I believe many times we really struggle with being at home and being that strong leader. Now, teaching adults in many ways is a lot less physical than teaching children, because children requires being physical many times. You know, you might be having to grab them or pick them up or put them places. It might be having to change their clothes. It might be having to clean them up. It's a lot more physical being with children. Adults, you don't have to take care of the physical needs in the same way. With adults, it's more mental and spiritual. But with children, it's both. It's physical, it's mental, it's spiritual. It's every part of you. And I believe that many times we think that discipleship, when it comes to children and grown-ups, is based around reading Bible stories and teaching about the Bible and praying and doing spiritual stuff. And yes, it is. But discipleship is so much more than reading the Bible. Discipleship is lifestyle, is living life. It is not just about talking about life, it's living the life. And so the thing is this, when you're now discipling adults, many times they only see you on a Sunday. Sometimes they might see you on a Sunday and midweek. But both of those times, they are set up meetings. and meetings where you have prepared yourself. You're prepared. These are not spontaneous meetings. Now, what happens in the meetings may be spontaneous, but you prepared yourself for the meeting. You prepared your mindset, you prepared your clothes, you are ready for what comes your way. And so when people see you, they see you in a prepared way. They don't see your everyday life. They don't see you when you're waking up at 3 in the morning, when the kids are jumping into your bed in the night and they're kicking you and they're keeping you awake. They don't see your reactions then. They don't see when you haven't had hardly any sleep and the kids come in early in the morning and wake you up and disturb you and see your reactions. They don't see you then. They don't see you when you're preparing yourself to leave the house to go to a service and the kids are not cooperating and you're trying to get ready and you're late and the stress that is building up. They don't see those parts. They don't see when you're about to leave the house and you finally got ready and you're a little bit late, and then as soon as you're about to leave the house, someone poos themselves, someone wheezes themselves, someone falls into the mud, and you got to go back into the house and now you're later than before. They don't see those reactions. They don't see how you handle stress. They don't see how you handle anxiety. They don't see how you deal with every situation. Your children do. And your children learn by imitating. They see every reaction. And this is why it's more difficult. Because your children see how you are in the everyday life when no one else is looking at you. And your children will say, okay, well, my parents raise their voice. My parents get easily angered. My parents are not very patient. They see you in every situation, and it's difficult to be a good leader in every situation, to be that role model. It's much easier to be a good role model on a Sunday, on a midweek service. This is why it's so difficult, because we don't understand that our children learn by imitating. They see what we do, they see how we react. They're not really taking too much in what we're teaching on a Sunday or the midweek. They're really focusing on how we live everyday life. That's how they learn from us. Yes, they learn from us reading the Bible, but even more than that, they learn from how we live out Bible in everyday life. So discipling children, I would say, is the most important form of discipleship, because it's the first form of discipleship. And if you get the foundation right, then it's going to be easier to build up upon that. If you get it wrong, then it takes a lot longer to fix the foundation. And this is what we see with a lot of our young people. They don't have a good, solid foundation. And so when they grow up and become teenagers, the problems that come upon their lives, they're not able to handle them because they have not been discipled in the right way. And so then discipleship becomes 10 times harder, because now we have to take away all of the bad experiences and rebuild from scratch. Studies show that the brain of a child is around about 80% developed by the age of 3 years old. So by the age of 3, they have learned from their parents or from those that they have been around. They have imitated, and those become their foundation stones in how they build their lives. And if we get the foundations wrong, then it becomes very hard to build upon that. And this is why we see so much health issues with our young people, because we're leaving our young children. We may be at home for 1 year and then we leave them. We go back into work, not understanding that there's another 2 years of development in that brain for it to become almost complete. And so what are we doing? Many times we leave our children to another, or in many cases to a screen, and their brains are getting destroyed because they're not getting what they need. They're not imitating our lives. They're not getting discipled. And so when they grow up, they don't know how to handle situations. They don't know how to live life because we have not been there. This is the most important discipleship, because if we get it right, well, then we don't need the same amount of discipleship later on. We don't need the same levels of help when they grow up, because they understand how to live life, how to deal with situations. If we get it wrong, then the work becomes more. And so this is why I believe God says, first learn to rule your house. Because if you get that wrong, ultimately your own house is going to crumble in some way or some form. Now, in closing, I do want to say that children are very different from one another. I have 3 children. They have 3 different minds, 3 different wills. And not everything works with the same children. You can't always use the same techniques. You can't always say the same thing to each child. Children are different. And some children are easier, some children are more difficult. And so I'm not saying my children are perfect, because they're not. And we have our challenges. We all have our challenges. What I'm saying is this: where is our heart in this? Our children ultimately have their own choice. When they grow up, they choose their way. But we can do our part. We can pour our lives into our children and give them the tools that they need, so that whatever path they choose to take, at least we know they have the tools to face every situation. I want to encourage traditional discipleship, the family, children, the bloodline, because I believe that's what God ultimately, first and foremost, has called us to do. Faith goes through the bloodline. The callings go through the bloodline. Many times we have a very low respect for family, children, being at home. We don't see it as a calling. We don't see it as a task. We don't see it as a mission. But I want to encourage you in saying that Jesus does see that as a calling, as a mission, as a task. And it is ultimately the greatest, because it is serving those who are fully depending on you. You give your lives, it's a sacrifice. And that heart and that mindset of giving your all, even though you get no recognition, even though no one sees the hours you put in, but you do it anyway. That's the heart that God is looking for. The one who can serve in secret. And so even though no one else sees what you do, God sees what you do. So I want to encourage you to have the spirit of the eunuch, to sacrifice your life for your children. Basically meaning that you give up your wills and your desires for your children, because they are carrying on the next generation. They are carrying on your calling. Your calling is not your life. Your life is so much more than your gifting. It's the people around you. You're called to love God and to love people, not love God and love yourself. It's a big, big, big difference. And so I know I have so many dreams that I've had to sacrifice, not just me, even my wife, in order to be better parents. But I believe God knows our heart's desires. God knows what you long for. God knows what He said. But ultimately, He wants your heart in the right place, and to be able to serve in secret, and to start at home, and to let God lead things in the right time. I hope these teachings have been of some use to you, and I wish you all the best. God bless.